Hey y'all. Today we're going to be talking about a chess concept called opposition. Opposition is super useful in the endgame. It can really be the difference between winning or losing or drawing a lot of the time in an endgame. So currently, these two kings are said to be in opposition. And either white or black has the opposition depending on whose move it is. So if the white king was here and moved to here, white would have opposition. And now black is forced to make an unfavorable move in a lot of circumstances. So this setup can be extremely useful depending on the circumstance. Let's look at one of those circumstances. So opposition is especially useful when you have one pawn in an endgame. So in this circumstance, if I can gain opposition, I can win the game, and there's nothing black can do about it. So this move wins me the game, and I'll show you why. Now that I am opposing black's king is going to have to move in some direction, and I'll tell you what move I want to make in all of those circumstances. So if black moves to the side, that allows me to move here, and now I'm clearing this pathway for my pawn. I have all of these squares covered. So black's never going to be able to get to the pawn because I can just walk right up here. And if black moves backwards, I mirror that move and don't allow black to move onto this column. And eventually, if black moves back, say black moves here, I can move the pawn. And now black can't get to here because my pawn has this, but all of these squares are covered, and my king is making this alleyway for my pawn to promote. Let's go back to this position. If black chooses to go back, same situation. I just want to make sure that I take away. So I'm pushing up and taking away these squares, making room for my pawn to get by. If black ever moves back onto the same column, onto the same file as my pawn, I just get opposition again, and the same thing repeats itself. So I'm making this alleyway for my pawn to get up. Okay, let's look at what happens if black gets opposition. All right, so now let's take a look at how we can use opposition to our advantage defensively. So now we're the black pieces, and it's our turn to move, and we want to prevent white from promoting this pawn. Well, if we move into opposition, we now have the advantage. If white's ever going to win this game, they're going to have to promote this pawn. And if they start pushing the pawn, you can just move directly in front of the pawn, and you just have to make sure that you never allow white to get opposition, and you should be able to draw this game. So watch what happens. So white's going to have to advance the king to be able to push the pawn any further. You take opposition again. If they push the pawn, you move in front of it, and you just continue this pattern, not ever allowing white to get opposition and moving straight back, and hopefully eventually ending up on this spot right here in front of the pawn. So you move straight back, black pushes up to help try to reinforce the pawn. You take opposition here, here, and now is a crucial moment where white just doesn't have anything to do because they're going to eventually lose this pawn. If they push up here, you take opposition. If they push here, you move back in front of the pawn. And now black has absolutely no way to defend this pawn other than to move here. And this is a stalemate, which is a draw in chess, because you have absolutely nowhere to move. If this king moves here, the king takes away these two squares, the pawn takes away these two squares, and you're not in check. And that, in chess, is called a stalemate. When you're not in check and you can't move, the game is drawn, and you can force this by utilizing opposition. Now I'd like to run through a couple puzzles that utilize the concept of opposition. There's a whole chess game before you arrive in those positions that we were looking at before. So let's take a look at some of the situations you might face in an endgame, and then the timing of utilizing opposition. So what's the best move in this puzzle? Pause the video and see if you can figure it out. So the best move here is actually to move your king right here. So if you move your king up, white doesn't have a whole lot of options here. You're attacking this pawn. If this pawn pushes, it gets taken. The king only has one square that can possibly protect this pawn, and it's right there. So the king makes that move. So now this pawn can't be taken, but it can be attacked. And when you attack this pawn, you're not giving white a whole lot of options here. If white takes, the pawns are split, and now you're I mean, it looks pretty unsafe. You're losing a pawn momentarily, so white's going to take, but then I can take this pawn with opposition, which is super key because the king can't come to protect this pawn, and I have control of this king right now. In the puzzle, the pawn pushes, you take back, and now we're in an endgame scenario with one pawn. So take a look at this situation and see if you can figure out what to do from here. So in the puzzle, white pushes the king, you follow with opposition. White pushes the king again, and you follow with opposition, and we've reached that position, that key position where we have opposition and are looking to promote a pawn. So now white's king is forced to one of these squares, you push up here, and you're creating this alleyway for your pawn to promote. And it's a beautiful thing. All right, here's another puzzle. This time, there are rooks on the board, and white has just offered this rook trade to the black pieces. So it's black to move. Give this video a pause and see if you can figure out what to do next. Cool. So in this position, we would love to trade off the rooks because this pawn is undefended, and what happens after that is pretty appropriate for what we've been talking about. So here, white's obviously going to take the rook back. We've traded rooks, and now I can take this undefended pawn. And what's white going to do? Well, white's going to maybe move there, and then I gain opposition. And that's the key to the puzzle, the opposition at the end. So recognizing that you are going to be able to gain opposition on your opponent at the end of a puzzle, or at the end of this sequence of moves where you're going to have one pawn and gain opposition, is crucial to the end game. So at this point, white's going to have to move out of the way, and you know what happens next. I clear the way for the pawn. The pawn's going to push, and we're going to make a queen and win the game. So that's about it for this video. Opposition is a super important idea that comes into play a lot, and that a lot of beginner players don't understand. So if you're a lower level player, you're going to have a leg up on a lot of people. I would say anywhere under 1,000 rated people, a lot of players don't understand the concept of opposition. So make sure you're utilizing those ideas in the end game, and you're going to be able to force some draws. You're going to some games that should be lost, you're going to be able to force draws on your opponents, and you're going to win some games where your opponent might be able to force a draw. So keep using those ideas, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.